Welcome to Deep Thought. Yeah, it's genetic. You know what? Sometimes I get inspired to do a particular video or a podcast for any of my platforms just by looking at something casual. Now, this one was inspired by the film trailer for film Ocean's 8, which is basically a female version of the Ocean's 11 movies. Right? And actually, I was watching the trailer. It was just random. It's ironic because I was uploading something for this channel, right? I was uploading something for this channel. Like the day I was uploading We Got Chipped Anyway, that particular podcast, right? Usually while I'm uploading, it takes a few minutes and, so I would always do something else. I always surf someplace else or read something else, do whatever while it's happening. So I went to this trailers page for Apple, right? You always go there. And I said, let me check it out, Ocean's 8, right? And it had Sandra Bullock as the main person, right? And apparently she, they showed her sitting in some parole hearing or something. And she was saying, I'm not going to steal anymore. I ain't going to do all that. And of course, as soon as she gets out, she puts together a crew to steal something, right? And then there was a scene, there was a little thing around the end of the trailer, right? She's talking to this man. I think that's James Corbin. I don't know, right? I don't really follow pop culture like that. But anyway, right? She's in this diner talking with this guy, and he said to her, he asked her, he said, is it genetic? Is the whole family like this? And Sandra Bullock was like, literally. Just like, because with me, if I see one thing, it connects to another automatically. Because I thought about this family of criminals I remember back in D.C., right? Like, it's like, I ain't going to call their name because one of their sons in that family played at this major college back in the day. I don't know if he made the NFL. I really don't know if he made the. I'd have to look him up. But he was a very good college player. So like I said, I ain't gonna put it out there. But I remember back in the day, the whole family was criminals, mother and father too. They were an intact family, but it's like everybody was into something criminal. The whole thing, right? And, I thought about that and, I started thinking, I thought about my own sons and everything, right? Just what talents they inherited from me, right? Like, my youngest, he's going, like, his teachers rave. He's like writing pretty good short stories and everything. And I know he's a researcher and stuff. That dude he'll just spend time on the internet just looking up stuff, just looking up random things and stuff. I was just like, man. And then the other son, he's like kind of got my art talent that I don't use. And then he's more business minded. And I thought that was so incredible. It's so incredible. And then I was like, I thought about some of the videos I've done or podcasts I've done for this particular channel when I talk about bloodlines and the science of mating. You know what? I think if we're going to really get behind this relationship problem or the mating problem, what's going on in society, we have to really think about who's mating with who. Now I know, the problem with it is it smacks of eugenics, and because of folks like Margaret Sanger and the infamous Adolf Hitler, people have a bad taste about it. But it's still practiced. Science of mating is still practiced by upper class communities and royals and everything. Even that thing with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, they do have a common relative. She's royalty. She's that's not just some random thing. Any women who thinking, oh, I can get a prince. Well, no, if your ass ain't some royalty, no, you will not. They are very strict about that. That's very political. They do not mate randomly. But one of the things with that, though, if you think about it, women especially, and just to be clear, this ain't about going in on women, but just pointing out a thing. Women control the future generations more so than men. More so than men. Women basically decide what talents, what traits are going to be passed on to the future. And that's a big issue. That's a big issue, especially in the black community. Because you have a lot of people with some negative traits passing their genes on. Whereas some people who could be more productive and more, can get some things done, their genes aren't being passed on. And it's deep to the point, because if you think about it, this is what the future of the community, any community has to be careful about mating. Any community. One of my mentors told me, like, there was a group in Africa, women were only allowed to be imprinted by the top 12% of men. That way they would look for that similar type of man. And, it's like when you look at it, think about family planning and stuff, you have to think about all those things, because even in many cultures now, it's not so much two people who marry, but two families who marry. You have to think about that. Okay, well, what you getting from that family? What type of energy? That's why in a lot of cultures, they still have arranged marriages. It's not just, it wasn't just some random thing and say, oh, yeah, well, we could put them and them together. There was a lot of science behind it, too. It was anyway. It might not be the same thing now, right? But it's a very important thing, because I remember what this priest said one time, right? This African traditional priest. It was a conversation about energy vampires. And yeah, they do exist. Ain't like people think, though, but that's a whole other conversation, right? Anyway, right, it's about energy vampires, and he said something interesting. He said if you find one, it's probably a whole lot in the same family, in the same bloodline, because in order to come through, there has to be some similarities and stuff. So, it's a deep thing. It's like, if you want certain traits in the future, you have to make sure that person mates. That person go out there. That's why in definitely some African cultures, right? In some African cultures, you had a situation where, women would be groomed to be married to the high priest and the kings and everything. The romance thing was out the door. Some Asian cultures, too. In fact, it was something that you saw in a lot of the high cultures. The mating wasn't random. The mating wasn't random at all. And usually when there was somebody who went against all that and just went against their own whims, like I discussed in a podcast a while ago about a queen of, like, in ancient Kemet, who didn't mate right, and as a result, probably changed the history of the region. They were just like, oh, wait a minute, or if they want certain things, or they want certain, traits to pass on. If someone exhibits like some great leadership traits and stuff, you want them to have children. Like, it's kind of interesting that regardless of what somebody think about Oprah Winfrey, she just never had children that we know about. Of course, you hear some stuff that she had a child here and there, but that we don't know about. Or it's kind of interesting that as great a person as Martin Luther King was, none of his children have children. I want y'all to think about those things, right? Because, powerful groups, they really look at genetics. They really look at the family. In fact, I've said my family's special. I actually know of it got back to me. I don't know how it got back to me that, like, the grandmother of this dude who dated one of my cousins had told him not to get too involved with my family. because she said we weren't right. And I was just like, oh, yeah, she kind of right. We kind of volatile. And it's interesting. Even like a lot of this stuff I'm talking is not just theory. I see it in my own family. I can if I see enough members of a particular family, I can see the same traits and even how people mate. Because if you follow the imprint thing, you can see that people going to mate according. They're going to choose someone who's similar to their opposite sex parent, or at least they should. So basically, they'll keep getting the same traits over and over, like in my family, right? I mean, it is what it is. Most of the men have at least the capability of being a womanizer, even if they don't choose to be. Like I have one cousin, he could easily get a lot of women, but he's like ultra religious, which ironically is something else that goes through my family too. Very sexual, but also very spiritual, even if it's not in a regular way. It's an interesting dynamic, but that's how people mate. And we're not even practicing the science of mating or anything like that, but there's a tendency. So it's like you're going to see a certain type of person or a certain type of thing in a family, right? No matter what. In fact, I'll use an example, even though this is a fictional example, for people who watch the show Power. If you really look at it, even though Ghost's son was kept away from that life for a very long time, he kind of took to it right away when he was started introduced to it. That's how that works, So it's like when you say it's genetic or something, you gotta look at the bloodline. Anything, any trait. Like I look at my youngest son again. Now he's a pudgy little kid, but interestingly enough, he's probably a gifted athlete if he wants to actually do something. And I'll probably get him into track or something. And plus, if he follows like the general thing with at least my side of the family, even though he's pudgy, he'll go through a growth spurt and be real muscular. In fact, he came out real muscular. He came out looking like he was on steroids or something, like Diesel. Looking like he was bench pressing up in there, right? But it's really that thing is really important for the family. Family should really be taken more seriously. The science of mating, the baby thing. Like paternity, we getting a lot of stuff on paternity fraud and everything. No, it's very important. Paternity testing should be mandatory. Because a lot of times if you have, like say you have some woman, right? In fact, I know of a case too. Let me use this example, right? I met this family one time. They had 4 kids. Husband, wife, 4 kids. One of those kids didn't look like the rest. Like the other kid, the 3 kids, it was two older ones, then this one, I use the term loosely, child, and then a younger one. The 2 older ones and the younger one look alike. They look like the parents. The other one looked like they might have been a break in a marriage or some affair or something, and daddy was just nice enough to keep raising it. That child, well, quote unquote child, was evil. I'm like, who that? You just wanted to ask, but see, that's a significant thing to ask because that thing didn't just come out of nowhere. So this woman, she, like I said, they either had a break or she had an affair, but she had a kid in there. And that child was evil. So I'm like, my first thought is, well, what's that child's family like? It's very important. It's people, that's a science to it. That people got to think about that, I would tell my sons, when they mate, okay, well, we look at their family too. Look at their family, because if she got a crazy family, if that woman got a crazy family and all of this, yeah, you might get along, but some of those traits might come through. And I know people say, oh, that's cold-blooded. No, look. One of the things we have an issue with in this society is too many things are not planned. Everything's too random. That's why we got a lot of chaos now. It's very important. Like if we, in fact, I tell you what, I can fix the black community. I can fix this black community in 10 years, easily. And people say, well, how you got this and that? Let me present an idea of mating of the science of mating. And let me put all this in a book and stuff. And then all I need is people to adopt the ideas. And I guarantee once you start having children, once you start mating more responsibly, I guarantee the community changes and you start seeing the changes in 10 years, even if they little kids. Like if I wanted to create, like if Rom wanted to create like a really, like just a great culture or a great ethnic group, because I talked about ethnogenesis before, right? I would just get high IQ, highly accomplished people who look kind of good. And I have some like science fiction thing going on or something. Seriously, I guarantee it. I guarantee it. But see, I would have to like not just know about the people, but I had to know about their bloodline. You know, I'd have to say, okay, so what did your parents do, grandparents do, and all of that. Really, I would have to check up to at least grandparents. See, okay, what were they doing? What were they on? All right. And if everybody check out, I'll say, okay, we're going to introduce you. I'm going to have some babies and all of that. Guarantee you'll start seeing stuff early. You have a bunch of genius kids running around. Now, I know some people probably listening to this are probably thinking, man, Rom on some mad scientist-ish sometime. Yeah, I am. But I just wanted to just put it out there, man, because one thing, you got to look at every single thing out here. Don't skip over it. Don't skip over the genetics, because the rich and powerful don't. Trust me. Like I say, even with this thing with Meghan Markle, I know a lot of women thinking, oh, I can get a prince. Trust me, I don't care what happened. It's not as random. It is not as random as people think. So anyway, right? Yeah, it's genetic. Anyway, y'all, keep rising and transforming. Peace and blessings.